Alright, quick little bonus video, because you may have noticed it's more happening on shorts. We sometimes get comments from people who love Meghan Markle, and they tend to be completely insane. It's very, very rare that we get a comment from somebody who is like, hey, I like Meghan Markle, I disagree with you. Almost always they'll accuse you of being like racist, sexist, evil, everything under the sun. It's normally furious. I've even had comments where I'll try and be nice, and then they'll like double down to make sure that I know it's an adversarial thing. So what is the psychology behind this? Because if you look at the facts, it's so obvious Meghan's taken so many people for a ride, and so many of the people who are fans of her are people that she would treat like utter garbage. So what is some of the psychology there? So first of all, there was something interesting that I read, I wish I remembered where, that people, when it comes to like their political affiliations, oftentimes we probably know this, tribal. They go based on groups, based on themselves. So for example, if you have someone and there's a policy that would benefit them in some way as an individual, if a group they identified with was against the policy, most of the time the people will be against the policy. So people like to identify with groups. So I think what Meghan's done is she taps into people are against this, people discriminate me against me for this and that. But if you look at her actual life, the things that she says happens to her really don't. I mean, she hid her background. She grew up pretty rich. She used her physicality, her sensuality to move forward in the world. So she absolutely was not like objectified against her will. But when Meghan says that she was a victim of these things, she can tap into that group mentality. People who feel like, yes, I'm part of that group and we're angry. It's the us versus them, as I've said many, many times. The other thing too is a lot of this us versus them and victim mentality very simply appeals to certain types of people, and that tends to be people with weak emotional control, lack of discipline, and lack of intelligence. Now, I'm not saying that as just like an insult. I'm saying that for a logical reason. So many of the comments, again, that support her and attack you guys have horrible grammar. They're like clearly written impulsively. But the reason that people with those mental characteristics identify with that is very simple. If someone's not very intelligent or they lack discipline, the world does feel like it's against them, because few people will look at themselves and say, hey, I'm not smart, or hey, I'm lacking discipline, because just the world doesn't work for them. The world doesn't work for them because it's too complicated for them. Their brain doesn't process it very well because they're not very intelligent, they're not very educated, or what have you. So that mentality of us versus them, of there's all these people who are bad and victim, 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 simply makes more sense because that's how their life feels. Again, I'm not saying there aren't people who are victims, but that just tends to appeal. And I've seen that very often, like in college classes. People who lack discipline tend to really love those mentalities, right? Take care.